Now, is e-commerce online businesses definitely could potentially qualify for E2 visa. Why? Because I've gotten multiple E2 visa approvals for online e-commerce business. Not all
Hmm.
of them qualify. E2 visa
Okay.
does not allow for what they call marginal business. So if it's very small scale and it's very early stage where you really haven't demonstrated any meaningful sales, and the sales are not sufficient to show the ability to employ people or enough business to have a need to employ people, then there's a risk of denial as a marginal business, too small. With the e-commerce business, there's a couple of key issues. Number one is by the time you apply for E2 visa, this e-commerce business needs to be active, operating, and viable. Because if it's very early
Hmm.
stage, the visa officer might be thinking, if you're just going to be able to generate a few $1,000s a month in sales, that is definitely not going to be satisfactory.
Okay.
Okay. Now, another
Hmm.
key consideration with a e-commerce online business that a lot of visa officers are concerned about is the ubiquitous nature of an online business. If the officer feels that the nature of your online business could be operated from anywhere in the world, it could be operated from
Oh.
Korea, then they're thinking, you don't need to be here, my friend. You don't need to be here. Go back home and run your business from Korea. So there has to
Uh,
be a component in your business plan that justifies the need to be here in the United States. I'll give you some examples from my prior experience where my client says, well, um, my target customers will be very averse, negative toward trying to buy from an online retailer from another country. Or if I'm trying to, the time differences are uh, so drastic that I wouldn't be able to provide good customer care if I'm taking 15 hours to respond to every customer request or questions or inquiries. So you got to address all these questions. Why is it important for your company to be a domestic United States company to be successful in the US e-commerce marketplace as opposed to being a Korean company? Naturally,
mm,
customers in the United States are looking at a foreign company. They're gonna be, skeptical. They prefer to buy the same products from a U.S. company. That's a big part of it. So you want to develop a business plan to have a strong justification to need to be physically present in the United States, even though you're online business that could be ubiquitous, operating from anywhere in the world, for example. Now,
hmm.
as far as evolving into a brick and mortar, you can mention the ambition of accomplishing that in the next few years. But if you emphasize that too much, you might, unintentionally trigger the scrutiny and inquiry as to how is that going to happen? Where's the money for that? When will that exactly happen? And how will that be implemented? It might invite a lot of scrutiny and inquiry about that, in which you don't have details for that just yet. So I would focus predominantly on the e-commerce business model to satisfy the E2 visa without the need of convincing the officer that you will eventually have a brick and mortar
Okay.
because the brick and mortar is way too speculative at this stage and it's not going to be credible nor persuasive for your
Hmm.
E2 visa qualification.
All
Okay.
right.